Hi, everyone. It's so great to be with you again for the latest episode of Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts. Anywhere you find yourself in this big, beautiful, wide world, my guest this time is Ranier Meadows Windsong, and she and I would like for you to join us in aligning with the energies of co-creation so that this show gives you the best information to your highest good and best outcome. Welcome, Ranier. It's so nice to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Wonderful. For those of you who don't know, do I call you Dr. Ranier or Dr. Windsong?
Dr. Ranier, yes, Reverend Doctor, but Dr. Ranier is great.
Okay. She's an interfaith minister and spiritual teacher. She's been working with clients in the community since the early 1990s. She provides counseling, coaching, spiritual development, energy work, and drum circles. She also encourages clients to reengage their creative spark. She's passionate about facilitating opportunities for personal growth, transformation, forgiveness in a safe and caring manner. She's also a wedding officiant. And to learn more about Dr. Ranier and her services, you can go to windsongcreations.com. And there's more contact information for you, but as always, I will put that in the notes when I publish the show. So welcome, Ranier. You had mentioned something about a meditation to start us off, and I think that's just wonderful. Would you like to do that now?
Yes, I would.
All right.
I always like to start meditation with a toning, and you can join me if you like. And I share this with clients and at motivational talks. And I was not blessed with singing, so I don't let that stop me. So I hope it doesn't let it stop you or the listeners.
Make a joyous noise, Ranier.
Yes. We're going to be using 3 tones, Ah, Re, and Om. And we'll repeat them 3 or 4 times. So take a deep breath, and you can listen to me do it 1 or 2 cycles, and then join in if you feel able. Ah, Re, Om. 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 As you take a deep breath, just allow the energy of that to move gently through your body. And take another deep breath. And pretend to breathe in through the soles of your feet. Visualize this beautiful magenta energy moving up from the center of the earth through your feet, up your calves, through your thighs, up your pelvis, up your spine, throughout your arms, out through the top of your head. And see this flowing out the top of your head like you would see a fountain. And see this beautiful magenta dripping back to earth, going back to the center of the earth. And take another deep breath. And again, see this beautiful magenta energy of the divine feminine. See it move up through the soles of your feet, through your legs, through your torsos, down through your arms and back up to the top of your head. Again, flowing out like a fountain. Back to the earth. And this time, as you take a deep breath, bringing this divine feminine energy, this beautiful magenta, up through the soles of your feet, into your legs, let it move into your heart, this beautiful energy. And fill your heart with this beautiful magenta. And let your heart expand. And now let your entire being be filled with this beautiful magenta. The divine feminine is nurture, is love, is intuition, is imagination. And now as you take a deep breath, visualize a beautiful golden light coming in through the top of your head from the center of the universe. And see this golden light coming in through your head, moving throughout your face, down your neck, into your torso, all the way through your body, through your legs, and out the soles of your feet. And see it anchored into the center of the earth. And breathing gently, allow a pulse of energy from the center of the universe to the center of the earth. Allow a gentle pulse to flow back and forth with you as the conduit, the holy vessel. Again, take a deep breath, imagining a golden, honey-colored light coming from the central universe, the divine masculine, and bring this beautiful golden honeyed light through your head, your back and shoulders, down your spine, through your legs, and again to the soles of your feet, into the great central sun, to the great central center of the earth. And breathe gently. Again, taking a deep breath, bring this golden energy into your heart and let your heart feel full of this beautiful golden energy. And let this golden energy fill your entire being. This golden energy is the divine masculine. Right action. Forward movement. Decisive action. And now breathing gently. See the beautiful gold and the beautiful magenta swirling together in your heart. And let your heart expand. And fill your heart with love. And let it fill the room that you're in. And extend this love to your family and friends. And breathing gently, extend this love out to your community, to your country, to the world. Let it be your intention whether there is hurt, let there be comfort. Where there's anguish, let there be peace. Where there is brokenness, let there be insight. Now fill your heart with forgiveness. And let the grace of forgiveness fill your being. And extend that forgiveness to your family and friends, to your community, and to the world. And extend that very forgiveness to the earth that we live upon. Again, taking a deep breath. Let your body relax. And come to this present moment. Bring yourself gently back to your surroundings. Taking another deep breath. And so it is. Remembering to bring that peace and self-love and forgiveness into your own heart once again. Now gently, fully awake here. Open your eyes. Be present to your surroundings. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Oh, thank you so much for doing that. I think every molecule in my body's got this big cheesy grin on its face. That was delightful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like the way you brought us into the now, because that's kind of our topic for today. And I would like to ask you to get us started. What does that look like to you when someone says, in your now? Where do you go with that?
For me, the now is exactly what's happening. The now is what is. And there'll be three things I'm talking about today. Sort of the so what is, and now what. And for me, the now is whether there is pain or sadness or pleasure or fear or frustration, to be fully present to those emotions. Sometimes as we're exploring our spiritual journeys, it gets confusing to people because they want to have a vibration of love and peace, and so they move into that while their still present moment is not peaceful. And for me, by being in the what is, the sadness, the fear about what's happening right now in our world, if I'm present to those things and I sit with them and I allow myself to feel the sadness or allow myself to feel the fear, then I go into a place inside myself. Where was the first time I felt the sadness? Where was the first time I felt this kind of fear? And as I allow myself to embrace that, I ask my guides and angels and the ascended masters to show me how to clear this wound at the beginning. And by sitting with it and experiencing what it has to offer, that feeling becomes complete. And I no longer bring the dregs of that feeling into my present moment. A lot of times people will want to move into a higher vibration without completing the feeling they had. When we do that, it's kind of like putting a metaphysical Band-Aid over top of something. So it feels good for a few seconds, but it doesn't clean the wound and allow the wound to heal.
I understand that. I have discovered through my work and my studies and all of that if you don't deal with the source, if you don't go in and find out what's what, you don't get it clean, and it will crop up again and again. People tell me all the time, well, I have this thing in my life. And I think acknowledging that it's there and going in and, like you said, asking, where's this coming from? When's the first time I felt this? What was going on? That is a very, very good way to actually cleanse all that out so you don't have to deal with it again, yeah?
Yes, and it's painful. The things that we hold as wounds, especially core wounds that happened when we were children, they're painful, and we are avoiding them on purpose. And I talk with my clients about holding down beach balls. And as they're children, I hope we've all played with beach balls or some kind of ball in the water. And you can hold it down for so long, but after a while it pops up. And if you have one beach ball of sadness and one beach ball of loneliness and one beach ball of fear and other beach balls, you can only hold them down so long before they pop up and then another one pops up. So going in and airing it out, allowing the feeling to dissipate, to become complete, is my understanding of what true healing is.
Well, now, as we're doing this, I would say that as we figure out what it is we're holding down, which beach ball we're dealing with and where it came from, we don't want to dwell on it and grind on it. We just want to acknowledge that it's there and allow it to complete its cycle and move on, yes?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that's a confusing point for a lot of people.
Oh, sure.
They believe that if you go into it, they'll be wallowing in it. And there's a difference, as you mentioned, between wallowing in something and releasing something. And if you're releasing, it typically people feel worse at the beginning, but better at the end. They feel a sense of lightness or completion, or even almost a floaty sensation. If someone is wallowing in their energy of the wound, they feel worse. They get angrier, they get more irritated, they get more dissatisfied with life. And
that would be a good light gauge as to which one you're doing.
Yes, exactly. And most people need to tell their story 2 or 3 times in the healing process. All of us, I think, know people that will start to tell their story and they get stuck in their story and they just keep telling the story over and over again. And that, for me, is an experience of someone moving into victim consciousness. So they're moving into blame instead of moving into telling their story to vent their story to help with the healing, the release process.
You mentioned a word that just set off light bulbs for me, that blame game. We don't necessarily have to blame somebody or something for anything. We just kind of have to own it and be okay with it, don't we?
Yes, and it's my belief that the ego, which all of us as human beings will have, and we'll have till the time we pass, and we need our egos, but our egos need to be tamed and to be merged with our higher consciousness, not completely squashed. And anybody who's tried to completely squash your ego will know how hard it will fight back. The ego is invested in a us and a then game and a blame game. So people on their spiritual journey might notice that when they start to make a quantum leap or they have a huge shift in their belief system, that their ego will start telling them stories. They'll say, you're not good enough. You don't deserve this. This isn't true. How can you afford it? What will the neighbors think? So the ego starts stirring the pot to keep us stuck because the ego doesn't understand that we're twining it with the higher consciousness. So, yes, blame is unnecessary. Blame keeps us stuck.
A friend of mine who was on the show several shows ago, we were talking about the ego, and she said, yes, ego, you can't just tell it to sit down and be quiet, because that's what I was doing, and it was successful sometimes, but not always. And she suggested that we embrace the ego just like we would a small child. Yes, dear,
yes.
I hear you. I understand what you're trying to tell me, but let's look at it this way. and give the ego a new story to play with.
Yes.
And I have found that to be incredibly, I won't say easy, but it's a lot easier than that beach ball thing, or telling
Yes.
us to be quiet, that we don't need it, because it's there for a reason. Dr. Wayne Dyer called ego, he says it's an acronym for edging out God. Because we think we can take over and control everything, which is kind of laughable when you think about it. So those two things help me develop the ego in a more gentle manner and feed it down a better path so that it doesn't jump up like the kid who needs to be sitting in the corner with the dunce cap on, or leading me down paths of, oh, poor pitiful me. So the minute I start feeling like that, wait, now, we're not going to do this. We're going to think about this a different way. And it's helped a whole lot.
Yes, I find that the ego is a wonderful adventurer. That's how I like to perceive my ego. And when my ego is really active, I like to take a deep breath and sort of just start observing my ego, what the ego is asking for. And then I ask the ego, like you suggested, I treat the ego like a small child and ask the child what it needs. Does it have a need for attention, for significance? Does it need to know it matters? Does it need to know that it's loved? Does it need to know that it won't be abandoned? So when I'm able to ask that question and then listen and observe my ego, then I can give my ego what it's really asking for and not what it's trying to manipulate.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you.
And for me, I believe that most of us are acting from an ego that's between 3 and 8 years old. And
all right.
It's amazing for me that we can get much done when most of us allow ourselves to be ruled by a being that's, between 3 and 8 years old. And it's a wonder that we don't have a lot of adult-to-adult interactions in the world, because we're engaging as child to child, or we're engaging as parent to child. And when I'm able to...
Part of the problem we have trouble with, the reason we have trouble with adult relationships in general is because we're coming from that place rather than from a higher perspective, let's call it.
Yes. And throughout my journey, I'm learning through the wisdom of Facebook to practice appreciation whenever I go into expectation. The ego is all about expectation and control. And when I find myself having an experience of expectation, and then when my expectations aren't met in the way that I would like them to be, then that gives my ego thinks it has permission to act out. So when I find myself moving into a place of expectation about a situation or a person or event, then I try to bring my consciousness to a place of appreciation. So I have a friend who I dearly appreciate, and she is artistic and psychic, so her timeline is different from mine. So when we make plans, I think we're making a plan to actually do something, and in her consciousness, she's making a plan to think about doing something. So when I have expectations of her that we are going to go at 2 o'clock to see a movie, I have to move into appreciation of her talents and abilities, because her 2 o'clock might be different than my 2 o'clock. But I think that also, for me, brings us back to, even though we're spiritual and otherworldly and ethereal, we still have to be able to function in everyday time and in everyday situations, because we still have bodies.
That is very true. Well, you said something about the so what and the now is. Which one's next?
Well, it's a therapeutic model, and the 3 question is, so what happened? So the ego will tell you what happened in a heartbeat, and you'll know what happened.
It will.
So, and they're also used in medical or spiritual crisis to determine what's happening now, the what is, and what do we want to happen, plan for next, and then now what? And these are the kind of questions in a spiritual crisis or at the hospital that somebody would ask. You've been to the hospital, they ask you what happened, what brought you here. And they ask you what's happening now, how do you feel, what's your pain level, what's going on in your body. And the now what is the diagnosis and the prognosis. What's the treatment? So what's the game plan? How will we move from this? So for me, the what is what am I thinking about? What in my life might be picturing lack or limitation? If my focus is on lack or limitation, I'll have more lack and limitation. So whatever my focus is on the what is what I'm having. If I'm having an experience of fear and I keep thinking about being afraid and how bad people are and who's out to get me, I'm adding to that fear. If I'm having an experience of fear, and as we said earlier, I drop down and ask for help in uncovering the original wound of where I felt this kind of fear, then I have an opportunity to release all of it, or at least layers of it.
Now, this doesn't this layers of that you're talking about when you drop down and look for that. It doesn't have to be in this lifetime, does it?
No, I think there are a lot of things. The present moment is a good place to start, but I think for some folks who have access to past lifetimes, there are certainly things that have happened to them individually, in their family or culturally, that can inhibit their forward progress.
And that's okay. That's kind of how it works. We go through all this stuff so that when we do begin to wake up, we can kind of turn around and say, okay, where is this coming from? And when you ask your guidance to this and you talk to your angels and the ascended masters, you might be surprised at what they tell you. I had that an incident. I can't talk today. Come on, Chief. I was having trouble for some reason telling when I was hungry. I could not make a determination within my biology when I needed to eat and when I didn't. And it was causing health problems as well, you can imagine. So I went and I asked my guidance and the ascended masters and my angels, please take me to the place where this started. And this was one of those, I'm going to say unconscious because I didn't realize at the time just exactly what I was asking for. But it turned out to be a very remarkable journey. Found out I was a little boy, 8 years old, and I had been sold into my parents because they couldn't afford to feed us. And in the slave ship, as I was crossing the ocean, every time I said I was hungry, they beat me until I stopped talking.
Wow.
So that was a very, very powerful trigger back in there. And as I began to awaken, suddenly this bubbled up to the surface so that I could address it and clear it up. I hadn't had a problem before, but as I began to look around inside and out and higher and lower and all around, I could say, okay, what is this? Where is it coming from? And I got that answer. Once I had that understanding of what was happening, I no longer have that problem.
And I'm so glad you shared that. That brings us to conditioned thought. And our conditioning is our experiences, our culture, what happened to us. And when we're children, we are sponges, whether in this lifetime or another, and we accept our conditioning as truth. And when we begin to act from that place of conditioning, we think that that's all there is. We don't understand that it's conditioning is just a group of thoughts that have become a belief system that can be changed. One of my favorite stories about conditioning, and Joel Osteen tells the story. It's Easter, and Victoria and him are in the kitchen, and they're preparing the Easter meal, and they do a ham. And Victoria gets the ham out, and then she says, where's the big knife? I need to cut the ham. I need to cut off 3/4 of the ham. Some of you may have heard this story. And Joel says, well, why are you cutting off the ham? And Victoria says, because my mother did it. And Joel's like, it looks like a perfectly good ham to me. Let's call your mother and find out why she cut the ham. So they get Victoria's mother on the phone, and they're chit-chatting. And Victoria says, well, Mom, we're fixing the ham, and I was going to cut it, and Joel wanted to know why. And I said, because you do it. And the mother laughed, and she said, I cut 3/4 of the ham off the bottom because I had a small pan. So because she had a small pan, she would have to cut the ham in order to cook it. And Victoria didn't know why it was done. She just knew it was a repeated action in her home. So when Victoria grew up, she always cut the end off the ham. It didn't matter what size her pan was. So that's a good example of conditioning. And as you mentioned, you were mistreated when you said you were hungry. So you were conditioned not to feel hunger, or certainly not to admit that you were hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're able to...
In all areas of our life as we're growing up, excuse me, and one of the things that I would add to this is the day that I had the revelation that everything I'd learned in school was wrong. And I won't say 100% of everything I learned in school was wrong, but 99 and 9/10% of it has turned out to be, because I went to school in the 50s and 60s, and everything has changed since then. So these hard and fast truths that I grew up learning and taking tests about and learning to regurgitate to please the masters of the school turn out to be just something that we were taught to regurgitate to please the masters of the school. And what I learned from that is it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to, are you ready? Think for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's so important, because part of the what is what's the story? And how often are we repeating the story? What kind of story did you learn from having to please the masters? What kind of story did you learn from having to do things in a way that spoke to part of your intellectual mind but not your spiritual mind? So that's one of the things I ask my clients is, are you stuck in the story? And are we trying to get other people to join in our story? Do we want to make something or somebody else wrong? Again, that's part of that ego blame. And most of us do that.
Right there, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And most of us think that kind of behavior will make us feel good if we can blame others. That's what the whole part of blame is about, is trying to feel better. But we know that that only adds to the energy of that and does not really shift our consciousness. Doesn't move us into, now what? How do we make things different? What would we like to accomplish? What would we like to see happen? How is a way that you were able to use that knowledge? I find that a lot of folks have difficulty with the integration of knowledge into their everyday life. How were you able to use that knowledge that you gained from that discovery that you were punished for being hungry? How were you able to use that in your daily life?
I found it quite freeing, actually, because once I realized the causality of that conundrum that I was going through, because it was kind of sudden. You know, most people know when they're hungry and when they aren't. I did, until all of a sudden I didn't. So that was a huge question in my mind, is where did this come from and why is it affecting me now? And as I worked through it and figured it out and became aware, then I could say, when my body was saying, well, I don't know if I'm hungry or not, then I can go in and I can tell it, yes, you do. Just remember, it's okay. And that allowed, just like going in and talking to the ego, that allowed the biology to remember what it needed to remember to keep me in a healthier state of being without the guilt and without the fear. That guilt and fear will just stop us cold, and it's so huge in humanity's life. Animals don't have guilt or fear. They just do what they've got to do to survive and do it next.
Mm-hmm.
Overthink everything. So as we're trying to analyze and criticize and find blame and all of that, we sort of tie our hands and feet and then try to walk. And this just undid all the knots. It pulled all of that open and out into the light so that I could say, I get it. That makes perfect sense to me. And once I had, I will call it a logical explanation for this sudden weirdness, it ceased to be weird. It ceased to be sudden. It was no longer a mystery, and I could deal with it.
Yes, and when we're able to shift that fearful emotion or that confusion or however our feelings are manifested, we become energized and we can move the direction of our thinking, which of course manifests in our actual belief system and our actions. One of the ways
while you were talking is that as we do this, we embrace our own power too, rather than that incident's power over.
Yes, and I think that's so important. And I have been attending a Unity church for about 25 years, and I really appreciate their principles and teachings. And they use a course of action called denials and affirmations, where one denies that it has power over them, and they move into an affirmation of their oneness with Source, with energy, with the power of the Source, and how that is reflected in us. So that's a perfect example. So somebody might say, I deny that the Paris situation has power over me. We're not denying the Paris situation happened. We're denying allowing the fear of that to invade our beings and paralyze us or cripple us or move us into a lower vibration of the ego where we want to take revenge. And it allows us then to affirm our oneness with divine source or the power of love, so that when we do decide to take action, we can be participating in an action that's inclusive and healing and not something that adds more energy to the situation that already happened.
That's a wonderful point. It allows us to act rather than react, and that's huge.
Yes. And sometimes, especially I find for myself, that if I'm in a situation where I feel personal pain or I feel personal fear, I really have to get quiet and just allow myself to get reconnected to spirit so that I have right thinking, which allows me to move to a response mode, as you stated. And I find when I'm able to do that, the ability to be in a response mode versus a reactionary mode is much more peaceful, and I feel less defensive, and I feel more hopeful because there's more energy. The more hopeful and open we are, there's more energy flowing through us. The more fear we have, or the shame or the guilt, the denser we are, it's harder for energy to flow through us.
Absolutely.
Another tool.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that when we are in a mass of others who have the denser reactions to things, that sort of tugs at us too, and that's one of the reasons I try to stay out of that sort of energy so that I can reconnect and I can come at things from a lighter and higher perspective.
Yes, I totally agree. I personally don't watch a lot of the TV. I'm well informed. I just don't saturate myself with the trauma. And another tool that I use, if I happen to watch the TV, I give a blessing of love to whatever they're showing on the TV. I try to not move into a place of joy and fear. And another tool I use is affirmative prayer. And affirmative prayer increases our awareness of the goodness of the spirit. And for me, this process frees me up to explore the now what. What's mine to do? What's helpful? A lot of people get paralyzed because they feel like the problem is so big. What can they do? And for me, prayer or sending the intention of love is one of the most powerful things that I can do to stay connected to spirit and stay in that place of response versus reaction.
I think, too, that when we do that, and when we can do this as a group, no matter whether you know the person next to you or across the hall or on another Facebook page, if we can do this, and when we do this as a group, we cause a huge wave of love and peace and understanding that cascades out through everything. And I have people argue with me about this, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But I think I even posted this out there, what if everybody on the planet decided to do this together?
I think you're right. I think that, collectively we don't understand the power that we have as beings of love and light. And I don't mean to be mamby-pamby about it, and some people are like, oh, you're just too Pollyanna. Yeah, and I really believe that if there isn't anything I personally can do right now to change a situation, what I can do is pray. What I can do is hold a space of love. And I do believe that we collectively have tremendous power. And I think there has been some study for specific prayer movements or prayer groups that crime has gone down and people report feeling more neighborly, that kind of thing. So I think it will take time for us to move into that again. But I tell my clients to try to limit their TV during these kinds of traumas. I feel like we're all of us a world of post-traumatic stress disorder from watching the trauma over and over and over again. We get desensitized, and then we start to think that kind of behavior is normal, and then we start to become irritable, and then we're irritable with other people, and it becomes a situation where people are defensive around each other for no reason because of this collective pain. And if we can take a step back and move into our heart, we don't have to take other people's reactions personal. We can let them be and try to hold, like you said, it's not always easy, but try to hold a space of love and peace.
Right. I do this twice a day. When I first get up in the morning, I am completely unaware of anything that's gone on the planet around me at all. But the first thing I do before I even get up and stand up is to thank the powers that be for everything and to send love to everywhere, every person, every place, every situation, every creature, everything. And then I start my day, and it always makes my day go better no matter what I run into later. And then I do it again at night. And this conscious, aware process of creating and holding this place of love for whatever's going on is more powerful than you can imagine until you get used to doing it. Now, I have a lot of people tell me, like you said, the Pollyanna thing comes up a lot, and people tell me, well, you can't tell me that you love these people who are doing all this stuff. Well, yeah, I can, because they need it more than their victims do, because they're acting out of a place of fear and ego and want to come up with. So they need the love and the light even more than the rest of us do. And do I like what they're doing? No, I do not like what they're doing. But I can love them as other creatures on the planet who are lost and who don't understand. And this is what raises things. And this is what I think, if everyone could do this, then all this yucky stuff would just die of entropy. There wouldn't be anything feeding it. It's the Native American story of the black wolf and the white wolf. You have the black wolf of anger and fear, and you've got the white wolf of peace and love, and they're fighting within you. And the child said to the grandfather, well, which one wins? And grandfather said, the one you feed.
And I think in our Western world, I think we're so invested in blame, and we do this to our children, and you make a good point, that it's so important. It was an old saying from my grandmother when I was a child, and I think we've lost sight of this, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And to me, I interpret that to mean, parents especially, I encourage them to separate the behavior from their child. And so you can still care for your child, but not care for the behavior. And you can take steps to help your child or other people in your life choose different behaviors, but you don't stop caring for the child just because they've had bad behavior. So I think you make a good point that even though these folks have done heinous things, they are still part of our human family. I really have enjoyed and been given great insight from reading the books of Robert Schwartz. He writes, he's written several books on life between lives. And he's changed the name of his book, so I apologize for not knowing them right off the hand. But he has a case study where he goes in and he has a psychic medium talk to them before they came into Earth this last time, and what was their mission for choosing the path that they chose. And he spoke with an alcoholic and a drug addict. He spoke with a terrorist. He spoke with the victim of the terrorist. He spoke with all these other, had sessions with their souls. And to tell about the whole story, it's so beautifully written, and the lessons that each one agreed to learn and to bring forward, it's just a beautiful explanation and helps me understand how these things might work together. Neil Donald Walsh writes a very simplified version of this, and I'm paraphrasing badly, and it's called The Littlest Angel. And there's a new angel that is created, and each angel gets to bring one gift to the world. And this littlest angel says, I want to bring forgiveness as my gift. And the angel council all says, well, we've reached a place where we're not needing forgiveness because we all understand who and what we are. And the littlest angel said, I've prayed on this. I've thought about it, and this is my mission for the world, is forgiveness. And so the angel council again, gathered and discussed, and finally the oldest angel came forward and said, I will go with thee. And as the oldest angel held the hand of the new angel before they jumped through the portal to come to earth, the oldest angel said, remember me when I smite thee. Oh. Meaning that he would go forth as the wizened angel to teach the newest angel how to forgive. Uh-huh. And to me, it brings back to the teachings, metaphysical teachings that I personally relate to in the Unity tradition. In the Unity tradition, we believe that every character of the Bible is a role that we play as a human being. So there might have been a time when we were Judas. So in the stories that we know from a biblical standpoint, Judas betrayed Jesus for the 30 pieces of silver. And when we look at that from a metaphysical point of view, where have you betrayed yourself in the character of Judas? Where have you betrayed another in the character of Judas? So it's about learning how we all play these roles. And so if we understand that the oldest angel came in to smite the newest angel, we understand it's part of a plan. It may be that the people who chose to commit the harm this time had as their deepest soul passion to create world peace by creating such an atrocity that we as human beings would finally stand up and say, enough is enough. That, of course, is just a theory. Nobody would prove that, and I'm sure this would anger many people. But I think the possibility is there that our guides and angels are with us all the time, and people are acting and reacting in their stories according to the lessons they'd like to share and give. And certainly if somebody is suffering emotional pain or loss from one of these actions, I certainly understand it's very difficult to move into a place of, acceptance or even forgiveness.
One of the things that I like to teach, and it's been handed to me, I don't know, on clue-by-fours and shovels upside the head and all sorts of ways throughout my journey, is to see the blessing in the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Once we stumble through an event that causes us grief or pain or anger or whatever else, and we see it as a lesson for us to learn, and I will tell you right now, if you keep stumbling into the same situation over and over and again, you're not seeing the lesson, so step back and see what that lesson is. And then the second part of that, and it took something very, very painful and physical and in your face for me to realize that there is a blessing in each lesson. And once we can see the blessing in the lesson and embrace that and realize that's why the lesson was there in the first place, things really do turn around on many, many different levels.
Yes. And one of the tools that I like comes from Abraham. Are you familiar with Abraham?
I am.
I really appreciate Abraham's teachings. And Abraham uses a tool called Now What? Or What Would It Be Like to Have? And when I use this tool about any situation, I get rockets of desire. And for those who don't follow Abraham, you can Google Abraham and be directed to the pages of Abraham. Abraham is a collective consciousness of angels that comes through a certain person. And one of the processes they speak about is what would it be like to have. So if I'm in a situation where there has been trauma or pain, and I can take a deep breath and move into that love place, I can ask myself, what would it be like to clear this situation? What would it be like to feel better? And I can also use that same tool, what would it be like to bring more rockets of desire to myself? What would it like to be? What would it be like to be in a happy partnership? What would it be like to never worry about money again? What would it be like to live in a luxurious home? So I think the more we can use these kinds of tools, the affirmative prayer, the moving into love, the what would it be like now, the easier it is to stay in the present moment. How do you feel about that?
I completely agree with you. This is not the easiest lesson that anyone has ever learned, but it is doable. And I think it all comes from becoming, and my longtime listeners know these two words out of my mouth quite well, consciously aware. Consciously aware of everything. What's going on inside your biology? What's really going on inside your thought processes? Because this is huge. What's really going on that causes you to say whatever you say? Where is this coming from? What are you creating as you speak these words or feel these feelings? And is this really what you want it to be like?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as we wake up to ourselves, because we have to do that first. It's the person on the airplane all over again. Oxygen on yourself before you help the next
Yes.
person. As we become aware of our authentic selves and embrace that, these things, I won't say they come easier, but as we look at them from these new perspectives, the light bulb goes off a little faster each time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a bit brighter each time. The cascade that flows through you gets bigger and more powerful each time. So like you said in your meditation at the top of the show, when you connect to these powerful energies and let them flow through your body, flow through your energetic body, flow through your biological body, you can't help but radiate them out, and you touch people in ways you have absolutely no idea that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you do this consciously aware and your higher guidance kicks in, what happens is you don't have to be aware all the time. You're just helping people because that's the way it is.
Yes.
That's
and I think we sometimes, I think sometimes we, especially as light workers, get a little confused about how much we have to do. And I think right action is vital to our experience. But I also think that, being able to be the vessel, being able, in the Native American tradition, they say, be the hollow bone that carries the vibrance of the spirit. So when we can open ourselves to being the vessel, the being radiates far more than the doing. And we can affect, far more folks with our intention of just being peaceful and loving than sometimes what we're capable of doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my positive affirmations that I've used for years is that I am the energy of creation. I am the divine source. I am its vessel and its conduit. And I think as we grow and become more enlightened and become more aware and attuned to these higher frequencies, that I am changes to we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that this is a very, very powerful shift. This we are creates the community of co-creation that we've been talking about through this whole show. And as this community grows, that light gets brighter and brighter, that wave gets bigger and bigger. And I think this is where we're headed because that's what's next in our paradigm of so now what happens.
Mm-hmm. And yes, I think that's the final question. Now what? What are our individual goals and dreams? And what are those, the right action is the strategies. So how can we be more? How can we be more fully present? And the first answer is to be present to our bodies. What's happening in our bodies? Are we tense? Are we relaxed? Are we well cared for? Are we practicing self-love? Again, the oxygen metaphor. If we're not loving ourselves and being respectful to ourselves, we really can't be but so respectful or loving to other people.
And we can't expect them to be respectful or loving to us because that's not what we're putting out there.
Yes. And I hear a lot of people talk about, I want a partner. I want more money. And so they have the desire, but their thought process is about lack or limitation. So if somebody is saying to the universe, I want a loving, sacred sexual partnership, and yet their inside voice is saying, nobody loves me, I'm never going to have anybody, I'm always alone, it's a self-defeating inner story that's creating the reality of what's happening to us. So in order to create the loving partnership or the increased abundance or the fulfilling work, we have to at first be feeling those things as we put them out in the universe. And I think that can be tricky. It's really easy to put words to things and not always easy to live the feeling of it first. Well, it's not hard, but it's tricky, yes.
That emotion is what amps everything up. And I really don't want to do this, but we have reached the end of our hour, Ranier. And before you go, do you have any salient points that you'd like to leave our listeners with so that they can kind of grind on that for a little while and maybe open some doors and windows for them as they go back and re-listen to the show?
I just thank you so much for having the show and for inviting me to be on. And I invite your listeners to just take a deep breath and relax. Again, what is happening in the now moment? And be honest about that. So if you are in pain, admit your pain. If you're having sadness, admit your sadness. And only when you come to a place where you allow that feeling to be complete will you find peace. Most of us, our feelings are interrupted. As children, don't do that. Don't cry. Don't say that. Don't feel that way. And so we have a whole bunch of uninterrupted feelings which turn into wounds within us. And when we're able to allow that feeling to be complete, it dissipates like a pot of boiling water. Once whatever's in the pot is gone, the pot is empty. So I invite people to practice self-care, saying no, breathing into what they desire for themselves. And even if they're able to look in the mirror and say, I love you, which is so hard for many people, to just be kind to themselves and to each other. I think kindness is a place to start if people don't know where to start.
Thank you very much. I really, really do appreciate having you on the program. I look forward to talking to you a little bit after the show, so please don't hang up. We've got a little bit of housework to do. I want to thank all of our our listeners for joining us today. I just love that you guys tune in and send me suggestions for programs, and I want you to keep doing that. If you'd like to do that, you can send that suggestion for a topic you'd like covered on the show to me at Chessie@ChessieRoberts.com, or you can use my other email, EOS4me@ymail.com. You can find all of my information at ChessieRoberts.com and my music at ArchersMeadow.com, and you hear little snippets of it as the show comes in and goes out. My book, Evolving into Self, From the Puppet to the Master, My Evolution from the Cradle to the Grid, is on Amazon.com. Thank you again for listening. Come back anytime to hear Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts. Have a great week until I see you again. Bright blessings. Bye-bye.